Hey guys, welcome to the first of many in my power rankings before the 2020 Olympia. So in these videos, I created a point scoring system that ranks the competitors based on how well they've done in the past 3 years. I won't bore you with the details, but I tried to score competitors in order of importance based on their recent Olympia placings, past accomplishments, reliability and consistency, and contest placings. This is definitely a work in progress as there's still changes that need to be made, but overall I'd say I'm happy with the results. Keep in mind that these aren't necessarily how I would personally place them, and I hope the results are slightly off as it would be boring and too predictable if they always panned out 100%. But I feel these actually give a ballpark figure as to where the competitors are expected to place. The 212 class is one of the weirder divisions in bodybuilding. The first of the Open's offspring, it was originally intended as an experiment that many were skeptical about, but it sure has evolved over the years. I think Flex Lewis helped define and popularize it, and now that he's moved on, its direction is in a bit of flux. But the standard and competitiveness has only grown since its inception. The guys that leave the division tend to do very well, and that speaks volume to how good some of these guys are. I tried to arbitrarily pick a candidate overlooked by the scoring that I think could do well, so without further ado. So first off, we have my dark horse candidate. I believe you say his name Seong Hwan Kim. Truth be told, I couldn't find much info about this guy, and it's probably more likely than not he won't be able to make the Olympia. However, he is not new to competing, nor is this his first Olympia qualification. He has competed in a total of 4 pro shows, with 3 of them being in Classic. This year he made the switch to 212 and won his first and only show in Korea. As you can see by these pictures, he has pretty good shape and proportions, which I feel are sometimes taking a backseat to thickness in the 212 judging, so whether or not he cracks the top 10 is anybody's guess, although barring weak conditioning, I think he absolutely could.
Number 10.
Next, we have one of the division's rising stars. Dietrich Bo Lewis has already got a sponsorship from Blackstone Labs when he's been a pro for less than 2 years. He hasn't shied away from a challenge as he's only competed in the big shows. He's an older guy, but you wouldn't know it from his physique as he seems to improve show to show and still looks very fresh. He qualified by winning the New York Pro earlier this year. In normal circumstances, he also would have won Tampa, but one of the big names switched divisions and needed an Olympia invite. I see this guy moving up pretty high sometime in the next few years. I'm just not entirely sure when it'll happen.
Number 9.
In 9th place, we have Hitada Yamagishi. This icon and fan favorite needs little introduction. He has competed in the pro ranks since 2005. To put this into perspective, he went up against Gustavo and Lee Priest. This will be the 49th pro show of his career. Everyone thought his time in the sun had passed until he made a resurgence last year after winning the Europa Dallas and then going on to place top 10 at the Olympia. While he isn't expected to push for a top 5 placing, stranger things have happened in the 212, and this is someone who can never seem to shed the spotlight.
Number 8.
In 8th place, we have Angel Calderon Frias. When I was tallying the points for 212, I found that not many people outside the top 10 had that many. One reason is that there weren't that many 212 shows in the season. The second reason was this guy. After placing top 10 at the Olympia last year, he wasn't done. He then put on a clinic for his European colleagues by winning the Romania Muscle Fest and European Pro, then the British Grand Prix, and then finally the Romania Muscle Fest a second time. I'm not sure what he's trying to prove, but he has built an absolute enormous amount of momentum behind him going in. It would be an absolute travesty if he can't make the Olympia this year due to travel restrictions.
Number 7.
In 7th place, we have David Henry. Did you think Hitada's resume was impressive? The bodybuilder formerly known as Giant Killer has broken 50 pro shows now. He has also cemented himself in bodybuilding history as one of 2 guys to win the now defunct 202 Olympia. This will be his 13th one, so not many people watching it will not recognize him. I think this will be a pretty important Olympia going forward for him. He fell outside the top 10 of last year, but is normally a top 6 guy. He seems a bit agitated by that, and anger can be a pretty compelling force. This year will probably decide whether or not last year's placing was a fluke.
Number 6.
A lot of these guys have only been on the pro scene for a couple of years. John Jewett is in this boat as well and hasn't placed outside the top 10 of any contest since his pro debut. He has quickly made a name for himself, securing the highly coveted animal sponsorship. He's one of the more educated pros as he has a master's in science, is a registered dietitian, and also a certified strength and conditioning specialist. One thing I like about him is he doesn't appear to pretend that some of the things people are doing in the industry are not risky or harmful. Another cool thing about John is that he seems to be establishing himself as a top-tier athlete and coach simultaneously. This is a big Olympia for him as well, as he'll likely be right on that top 5 bubble, and securing that Olympia qualification for the next year has such a huge outcome on one's planning.
Number 5.
Can one truly be considered the giant killer when they reside in the 212 division? If anyone can, it's this guy who competes in the 170 to 180 pound ranges on stage. It is truly frightening what he would look like if he ever found a way to add another 10 to 15 pounds of muscle onto his small frame. But weight is just a number to this guy, as if you've ever seen him work out, you'd wonder if he has any Formicoidea genes in his DNA. He has one of the craziest crucifixes of today's crop. This says a lot when you are the lightest top-tier pro in the IFBB.
Number 4.
Ahmad Ashkenani probably doesn't have the name recognition he deserves in the States due to residing in Kuwait. His 5th place at the Olympia last year may not look impressive for the 4th-ranked guy until you realize it's the lowest he's placed in any pro contest before. He definitely has that grainy, dense physique that populates the division. Many people not considering him a contender should be reminded that this is a former Arnold Classic champion and a 2-time runner-up at the Olympia. I hate to speculate based on home shot photos, but his recent pics have him looking very sharp. His main weakness is his stomach can be a bit protruded, but he has everything to hang with the big names. He is still very dangerous in this division.
Number 3.
I realize this is perhaps a bit controversial for some, but the truth is Derek Lunsford has had multiple chances to dial it in, yet hasn't been able to do so. At his young age, it is probably just a matter of time before he does, but consistency and reliability are factors that need to be considered in these rankings. Also, after his initial pro debut in Tampa, he has only done the Olympia. Before I sound too negative on the guy, I want to point out that I am a huge fan of his physique. He has pretty much everything, and although some argue his legs don't flow well from his upper body, I'm not entirely sure I agree with that. Also, his recent pics are looking pretty good and even show a gnarly Christmas tree, so he is definitely making a statement to the others that he's not messing around this year.
Number 2.
In 2nd place, we have George DaBull Peterson. Some might feel this is too high given he's done one contest in the 212. I found that when people switch divisions, it's usually for a good reason with the expectation of advancing one's career. The jump from Classic to 212 does give me pause though, as some of the top Classic guys struggled there before dropping down. What's unique about George is he sort of always lived on this island where he doesn't really compare well with the others. He lacked the shape to hang with Bumstead and Breon, but then had too much muscle to really battle the rest of the field. The division should be a better fit for him, and it should make the judges' lives easier. He shouldn't be untouchable here either, as he's a couple inches taller than the others, and some wonder how well his legs will stack up. But the fact remains that this was a guy who finished 3rd in the world every year in a division many thought he didn't fit into. How George fares here will unquestionably be one of the highlights of the event.
Number 1.
Do you find yourself lacking energy and stuck in a rut? Do you feel your life isn't going to get any better from here on out? Do you have aspirations to starve yourself, tan your body, and get a Brazilian bikini wax, but feel you're too old for that kind of stuff? Well, Elgargni says to man up and thong out. He shocked the bodybuilding world last year when he won last year's Olympia at the ripe old age of 47. While it's pretty safe to say he won't have the longest Olympia reign of all time, it will be remembered for years to come regardless of what pans out. Anyone in their 30s and 40s can tell you something they regret not pursuing more in their 20s. For Elgargni, this was bodybuilding, as you can see by his early photographs. His shrink-wrapped thin skin was remarkable and has definitely played a role in allowing him to defy Father Time. And he definitely remains the gatekeeper to the title. What's even crazy to ponder is he seems to have gotten better this year, and one can only guess how that will play out. So there you have it. To be perfectly honest with you guys, the 212 hasn't necessarily been my favorite division in the past, partly because I'm a taller guy and don't really have anyone to identify with or root for, but also because to us layman followers, every year seemed to be a foregone conclusion and not that competitive. But this year seems different. There are so many unknown variables and moving parts, it is all of a sudden wide open and one of the most exciting contests.